Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to your Guide to BIM Careers webinar. My name is Gordana Radonic. I'm the community manager here at Graphisoft. And on behalf of our Graphisoft community, I'm excited to host this session designed to help you learn, grow, and advance in your BIM career. And today with me here today, I have two colleagues, Marina Cabral and Nando, who will be helping you and guiding you through explaining how BIM roles have been evolving. So over the past decade, we've been witnessing how BIM roles have evolved from technical positions into strategic functions, and they are shaping now how projects are planned, coordinated, and delivered. And today we'll explore that evolution and clarify one of the most frequent questions that we hear: what distinguishes a BIM coordinator from a BIM manager? And before we start with this, we would like to hear a bit more from you. And I will start with a quick poll to see what are your professional backgrounds. So what you will see on your screens is going to be a poll with a multiple question. So based on your experience now, currently on the positions that you are working, what best explains what you are dealing daily with? What is your job description fitting best into? And yeah, most of the people are identifying themselves with architectural designer role, but we can see that some of you who joined are already working on the positions like BIM coordinators, BIM technicians, or BIM managers. Okay, thanks everyone for answering. Like most of you answered, and yeah, as we can see that, as I said, most of you are in a position of architects, and you're probably looking in how to get more education and go into direction of evolving into some of the technical roles of BIM coordinator or BIM manager. So with me today is Marina Cabral. She is our dear colleague here in Graphisoft. She has a rich experience in the United Kingdom, working as BIM coordinator in the industry. She has been working for a couple of years here in Graphisoft, developing some of our Learn materials and Learn courses. But I will give words directly to Marina to introduce more in detail herself and start with the presentation.
Thank you, Gordana. Yeah, I think you covered almost everything. Yeah, I'm a Brazilian architect. I've been living in the UK for the last almost 20 years. And before I joined Graphisoft, I was working in architectural practice here in London as beginning with as architecture design and then trying to move towards BIM. I became a BIM coordinator. And just recently, 3 years ago, I joined the Graphisoft team because I was passionate about the software, about ARCHICAD. So I joined Graphisoft Learn team, and now I'm the content manager for our Graphisoft Learn. So everything that you see, all the content that we have available for you is kind of part of the scope of my work. So I'm daily working with the BIM Manager and the BIM Coordinator programs, and that's why I think I'm here today to talk a little bit about these two roles. So today we will explore the many possible ways that you can advance your BIM career. As we saw on the poll just earlier that Gordana shared with us, you are coming mostly from the construction industry. We saw you are mainly architects, but we have some already BIM coordinators and BIM managers. But I saw also that we have some educators and students. So if you want to move your career towards BIM, how can you do that? Which roles can you have as options? And that's what we're gonna talk about today. And we're gonna focus mainly in two paths, which are the BIM manager and the BIM coordinator, because I think this is still a gray area. People still don't know exactly the difference between these two. Here you can see what we call the BIM pyramid. regarding roles. So we are showing the roles you may have within a company working with BIM-enabled projects. And this is naming that we at Graphisoft we use. So if you look at the very bottom, you're starting with the what we call the BIM users, which are professionals working directly in a project with some knowledge about softwares, but not necessarily really working with BIM strategies or BIM standards. But they know how to model, and they are there working in a daily basis in a specific project. Then if we move up, we have what we call the BIM author. And these are professionals still working directly in a project, but with more experience and more advanced knowledge regarding software and modeling in general. Here we could place like BIM architectural technicians, for instance, or architect assistants. If you move up, then we start talking about the BIM coordinator. And as you can see, as you progress up, you kind of accumulate your knowledge. So we expect that the BIM coordinator will have advanced software knowledge, but also be expert and know about processes and standards related to BIM. Then if we move a little bit up to the top of the pyramid, we can see now the BIM manager. And the BIM manager will have different responsibilities depending on which organization they were working on, but the main job is to oversee BIM projects and BIM standards in a strategic point of view. So here you can see that we have a red line dividing office level to project level, and the BIM manager is the very top at the office level, overseeing the whole company. And the BIM coordinator, BIM author, and BIM users, they are at the project level. So this is already one of the main differences that you're going to see between a BIM coordinator and a BIM manager. I just want to draw attention to one more BIM role, which is the information manager. And we're not going to focus on this one, but I think it's worth mentioning it because it was introduced by ISO 19650, the need of information management function when you are working on BIM-enabled project. And this person is responsible to overlook, federate, coordinate all project information coming from all different consultants involved in a project, not only the architects, but the architects, the engineers, the service engineers, and make sure that the information is accurate, relevant, and complies with the requirements for that specific project. And why I'm talking about this role? Because sometimes the client, so usually they can hire a third-party BIM consultant to be responsible for this role, but sometimes the client can ask a BIM manager from one of the consulting teams, which are part of the project, to take over this responsibility. So if you're a BIM manager of an architecture company, likely at some point a client will ask you to also take over the role of the information manager. So it's important to mention this one. But now let's talk about the BIM manager task. Let's just dive a little bit deeper in each of the responsibilities of a BIM manager. And if you're considering working as a BIM manager, you will have loads of responsibility, and it will vary a lot depending on the size of the company that you are working on, the stage they are at their BIM journey. So for instance, you may join a company that's just starting with BIM and need to handle a full BIM implementation. So you're going to have loads of tasks on board. But you might be joining a firm that already has a BIM strategy, but just need to carry on adapting to new workflows, BIM updating regarding new project types, or just because the company is growing. And sometimes you'll find an office which has completely mature strategy. So we just need to do a little bit of improvements or routine maintenance. So depending where you are, where your company is on your journey, your responsibility will be different. So let's start with the BIM manager roles and responsibilities when we are talking about a full BIM implementation. And this diagram here is showing kind of a timeline of your responsibility. So we need to start setting clear BIM goals for your company. And this vision is the foundation for the BIM activity going from that point onward. So we need to agree with the directors what your goals regarding BIM. So the next step, you need to identify both international and local standards and align the best practice and meet regional requirements. So you need to see where you are placed in the world see if you need to incorporate the ISO 19650 into workflows, and if there is any local standards that you need to follow as well. Then you need to look into these standards and look into your office and start creating office standards based on these benchmarks. At the same time, you start looking at strategies. So you need to define what are the best strategies for your firm regarding, let's say, project startup, data management, quality assurance, coordination, and so on. When everything is in place, then you need to produce your own standards that you're gonna be the everyday tool for your team, which are the ARCHICAD template and the BIM manual. So these are kind of the Bibles that your team need to use on a daily basis, and it's your responsibility to create those and keep those updated. And finally, of course, doesn't matter if you create really good templates and manuals if you don't train your staff. So it's also your responsibility to make sure that your staff has been trained and know how to use these two tools. So it can be either through CPDs, workshops, or formal programs, but you do need to spread BIM knowledge and skills throughout the office. Now, the implementation is just the beginning. After that, you need to maintain and improve the strategies. So it's a continuous journey. So once the foundation, the baseline set, is your role as a BIM manager to reassess the office strategy to make sure that you're up to date with technology. We know how BIM evolves quickly, how so many different softwares are available for you. So we need to keep up with the technology and also with project needs. So maybe you have a new project type come on board. So you are usually working with the residentials and now you're working with commercials or hospitality. So you need to make sure that you are updating all your standards and all your documentations and training your team to make sure that you are is still relevant. And of course, if something changes, you need to look again at the project startup, at the data management, at the quality assurance strategies, update the templates if needed, update the BIM manual, and of course, continues with the training. Now you look how the BIM manager will be involved during the project development. And although in our point of view, we think that the BIM manager is not daily involved in a specific project, but it's crucial that the BIM manager is involved during the early stages of the project. So the project starts with your company receiving an invite for a new project. So your first responsibility is to review the exchange information requirement that the client sent to you, which is going to establish exactly how BIM will be used on that specific project. So for instance, if the requirements that you receive from the client is not clear, it's up to you to clarify the terms, the scope for the BIM deliverables. And then once everything is understood, you need to prepare what we call the BIM execution plan or BEP. And initially you need to do that for your own company, but later on you need to synchronize this document with all the consultants involved in a project. This will be followed by the team appointment and make sure that you got the right expertise, capability, and capacity in your team. So you are the one who knows who is the best for that specific job. You know your team, you know the knowledge and the skills. So it's up to you to decide which one is better for that specific project. And then as the project gets underway, we are always to become available to help and support the development if needed. Okay, so now we covered the BIM manager's tasks. Now we're going to move into the BIM coordinator's task. So in a BIM enabled project, your company will have, as you saw, the BIM manual, the Office ARCHICAD template, the standard set up by the BIM manager. When the practice is appointed to a new project, you receive the BIM execution plan, again, that was prepared by your BIM manager in conjunction and together with the other consultants on that project. And here is where the BIM coordinator steps in. And the first job of the BIM coordinator is leading the project startup, make sure that the office standards and templates reflects all the special project requirements and comply with the needs standards. When it's required, you're gonna need to make changes to the office template and create what we call the project template. So you might change properties, you might need to add information data validation checks and so on, depending on the requirement of that specific project. You need to look at the established office strategy set up by the BIM manager and make sure that you choose the right one for that specific job, resulting in a tailored project template and a clear modeling strategy moving forward. Once the project begins, the coordinator becomes a problem solver. So challenges will come up, we know. So maybe it's a large, complex model. So it's the job of the BIM coordinator to help your team overcome these obstacles. And even better, if you can, try to anticipate the issues that you're going to have and avoid them when possible. You also need to make sure that all data requirements are met according to the specification and to the BIM execution plan. So from ID classification to properties, and make sure that all your data is in the right format. As you know, the main challenges is to have a good model, which is accurate and is carrying quality information, structured information. So the quality assurance process is a key to the job of the BIM coordinator. So you need to think about checking lists and protocols to make sure that the model and the data is consistent, not only within ARCHICAD, but when it leaves ARCHICAD, and it needs to be consistent with all other tools. And as coordination moves forward, you need to make sure that IFC translators are suitable. You need to handle class detections when necessary. You need to communicate coordination issues and support your team using platforms like Solid. And of course, this is not a one-time task during the whole project. These tasks will carry on repeating through the whole project cycle, from pre-design and up to construction. So here, I'm getting to the end of my presentation. So here is just a comparison. You can see the BIM coordinator and the BIM manager tasks together, working in parallel and synchronized. We can see, as we mentioned before, the BIM manager is at the strategic level, while the BIM coordinator is on the project development level. And again, just to run a parallel, you have the BIM manager defining standards and practice and systems, while the BIM coordinator will need to enforce these standards at the project level. While the BIM manager is creating the ARCHICAD office template and managing it, the BIM coordinator will look at this ARCHICAD office template, incorporate any specific requirements for that project, and create the project template. While the BIM manager is developing the BIM execution plan and the BIM manual, the BIM coordinator needs to define and choose the best strategy for the project. While the BIM manager is training the whole office, the BIM coordinator is giving support to the project team and on the modeling challenges. And while the BIM manager is overviewing the project, the BIM coordinator is looking at the data production, the quality assurance, and coordination being involved in a daily basis on that. And while the BIM manager will delegate tasks to the BIM coordinator, the BIM coordinator will report back to the BIM manager. So hopefully this is a good quick overview of both BIM manager and BIM coordinator roles. And with that, I call Gordana back. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marina. Thank you for those valuable insights into this topic. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, someone who is truly a BIM evangelist. He brings a wealth of intercontinental experience spanning America, Asia, and Australia. It's Nando Mogollon. Nando is one of our key instructors in our Graphisoft Learn program. So many of you maybe have already met him, or soon you will if you join one of our courses. What makes today especially exciting is that Nando will share his personal perspective and real-world experiences on how the BIM coordinator and BIM manager roles function in practice, from daily operations to strategic decision-making. So I'm sure you will enjoy. Nando, please take over.
Thank you very much, Gordana. Thanks, Marina. That was a great presentation, really. I don't really have slides to show you, and that picture really doesn't make justice to the amount of gray hair I'm carrying these days. I'd rather have it like that, but such is life. The perspective that I want to bring to you is it's one from two different angles. On the one hand, as Gordana mentioned a minute ago, I've been teaching on the BIM management course from, I think it was from the 3rd edition, if I'm not mistaken. I took the second one myself, and the BIM coordinator from pretty much from the very first edition of it. And but I have only one foot on that side, and the other foot I have is actually in the industry, working as mainly as a what you will identify nowadays as information management to some extent. But I've been keeping one foot on the Graphisoft Learn and with companies that I assist every now and then using ARCHICAD. So from that point of view, I can clearly see what's going on from both sides of the table. On the one hand, on any given BIM enabled project, a project that is by the client being requested to use models and to use them for purposes, specific purposes, most likely the documentation side, which is the one that you very likely have more experience with. But extensively and more with the intention of creating what is widely known as a federated model, a model that is a representation of the actual building at any given point in time by assembling the models from all the different consultants. And that's where you actually start with the need to having different roles that will take on certain activities that are going to be necessary in order to produce that federated model. And that's where one of the key points that I will take away, and I will suggest that you consider it to take it to heart, will be that differentiation in between being something being a role, a temporary role that you will play in a project, and separate that from what actually is a position or a title, if you like, right? If I can trust my experience, most of you might be already taking on some of the tasks that a typical BIM coordinator or BIM management or BIM manager will play on a given company. And that is usually the case. That is sort of, or in a way, falling organically into one of these two roles, really, which is what happens with most people, right? You sort of good with the tools, but you also have a good understanding, somewhat of an interest, and de facto you become the go-to person in the company that people will ask questions about ARCHICAD, even if you don't have the title, right? So that happens quite often. It might or might not be your situation. So pushing that forward and trying to gain more and more skills around the same type of tasks, the same type of responsibilities, is what will eventually will officialize your either role or position as a BIM coordinator or BIM manager. What you want to have is a situation where you fall into that well prepared, right? And that's where these two courses are a fairly good fit. They, if your company is using ARCHICAD and you're running through projects and the projects are, running through construction, and you have to deal with consultants that are usually using another tool, not only other BIM tools, but actually CAD and GIS on civil and civil tools. The the most likely result of that is that somebody's going to have to deal with the questions that come naturally out of that process. And those are the questions that a BIM coordinator, a BIM manager will be best positioned to solve. So I will say that with the interest of advancing your career towards the technical side of architecture, um, both set of skills, the skills that a BIM coordinator will play and the skills that a BIM manager will 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 learn, will definitely help out in playing those roles properly. Um, one one good experience that I was talking to Marina a while ago, a couple of weeks ago, in regards to these two roles and what I've seen in the industry, is that because I've been doing this for a little while, for a couple of years already, I have had the chance of playing the role of information manager in a project, which is sit on one side of the table, and having to deal with both BIM managers and BIM coordinators on the other side of the table that have gone through actually these course. So I know they have the skills, and it's way easier from my position defending the pretty much protecting the the requirements and interests of the client, developer, construction company, or the owner by default. Um, Having that conversation with a consultant, in this case, the architect, who I know understands how to get to where we need to go, having a federated model that conveys and gathers the information that we actually need to get the project done properly without clashes, with enough quantities or trust in the quantity, all of these kind of things, in a model that actually can be trusted to be the source of the information for the project. So you literally, as the saying goes, you end up building twice. You build first on the computer, and then you go build in real life. And having that chance, um, you will be able to pick up a lot of errors before they hit the site. All those skills are pretty well collected and condensed in these two courses. The two courses are not quite the same, are quite different in some of the skills, in the specific examples, and the areas in which we dive deep into the subjects, so that you have not only some new knowledge in depth, but also give you a fairly good overview sideways, so you can have a good picture globally of what's going on in a project, not just focusing or narrowly focusing on what's going on inside ARCHICAD. That's definitely not the case. So from the point of view of what's going on in the field, I can put my hands on fire when it comes to saying that you can tell from miles away when a person has been given the role, or it's playing the role of a BIM coordinator, but in essence, it's just an expert modeler, but the side of processes is not quite there. Neither probably and very likely the understanding of what BIM is beyond your own software of choice. And that's something that these two courses will give you a good overview of those two topics. Now, the other bit that I wanted to mention is, even though these two courses are a very good source of toolkits to advance your career in the area of building information modeling from the point of view of ARCHICAD, with practice, let's say you get into that, you start getting into the role, having the skills, eventually that leads to different positions that can literally it can boost you into another position further ahead. half of the knowledge you get is technical, is quite technical. There's a little bit of reading on the ISO standards, which are fairly technical, and you need to read them with a good bottle of water because it can be quite dry. Some of the other content might be technical, but it might be more familiar to you because it's the ARCHICAD side of things and the tricks and how this works and how best to use a particular feature of the tool and so on. But the other half is the one that gives you or polish your skills around how to manage people, how to deal with processes and deal with projects. And when you combine that with whatever area of practice that you run with, meaning in your country or your region, and both the professional preferences and cultural preferences that you deal with, you end up collecting a fairly good understanding of, broadly what we call management, and coordinate a project using the technical tool of BIM as means to get there. But what you gain through the process of running through that, having that role, it doesn't mean that you're gonna steer away from becoming, I don't know, one of the directors of the company, a senior associate. The opposite is true. Gaining this type of knowledge can easily catapult you into a much better position down the road. What you gain as a technical skill, it's only one half of it. The other half of it is very well on the management side and the integral understanding of a project, not only from the artistic and practical view, but also from the technical view, which is what we focus on. I think those two, let's say those two different point of view on how these courses will give you good tools for your career will be a good takeaway for you to consider. So if you're thinking of taking these courses, give it a little thought in terms of what's going to be the best fit for you. If any advice I can give will be, don't jump the gun. If you're not quite there for coordination, take that one first before we jump into the BIM management course. Because in the BIM management, it is assumed that you know a bunch of other technical things that can be understood or they can be learned in the other courses. So go through the steps. I think they all offer very good skills that will that complement each other rather than being an overlap. There's a little bit of overlap, obviously, because we're talking about the same topic. But in general, if any advice, I'll say go through the process. I think the path is fairly well thought for that purpose. To you, Gordana.
Thank you, Nando, very much. I can see that we are having a lot of questions appearing. I want to remind everyone
did I poke the beehive and then I'm getting 100 questions
Yes,
back?
I think you started many thoughts, and there are many good questions. So I just want to quickly remind everyone of our Graphisoft community. So for those of you who joined our live broadcast and maybe you didn't join GoToWebinar this time and you don't have access to questions, you can come join our Graphisoft community anytime and join our forum, one of our programs, and also keep up to date with what's coming next. We are always publishing in our Graphisoft Insights everything that is news and that it's upcoming. I would just like to mention that Mariana thanked for the answer, and she added that Open BIM is the way, and she concluded both BIM Coordinator and BIM Manager programs. So it's very nice, Mariana, that you joined us still in this webinar, and that she totally recommends. But yeah, that's her fight nowadays, how to have other people understand all the processes. So I'm glad we covered that a bit. And Thorsten, I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing the name. On one of your previous comments, Nando, he would differ from your explanation that BIM is the decision whether and who you use 2D or 3D. It really starts with a common data environment. I think that we open a lot of interesting thoughts and comments here, but unfortunately we would have to wrap now. So I'm really happy for a big interest, and we'll try to follow up with some of you and the comments and questions you had. Marina, Nando, thank you so much. It was a really nice session. I hope it helped attendees to understand better the roles and to make a decision for their career paths. Thank you all and have a very nice day.
Thank you. Bye.